I would like to start by introducing our panelists. I guess I will start in the order in which they're appearing here on the dais. To my far right is Lisa Lavoie, who is the Tunxis Director of Library Services. And then we have Steve Erzinghaus, who is our Professor of English and, teacher in new media communication. And next to Steve is Jesse Abbott, who is an Associate Professor of English and Philosophy. Immediately to his left is David Polgar, who is a lecturer in business law. Here we have Henry Millward, who is an Associate Professor of Mathematics. Here we have James Schlater, who is an instructor of English. To James's left is Linda Nowitzki, and she's Professor of Biology. And last but not least is Giorgio Muño, I knew that, Muño, lecturer in economics. And we have a set of questions that we're going to discuss, and hopefully we'll have a great freewheeling conversation. But first, we've asked each panelist to address the question more broadly of what their relationship is to technology as an instructor or an administrator. So maybe we can start at the end of the table again and ask each panelist just to take a minute to talk broadly about that relationship.
Well, I'm going to say publicly that I'm addicted to information. So the person you see here at the Tunxis Library, I'm the same person at home. I am constantly looking up things, and it doesn't matter the format I have to go to get the information, so I'm format agnostic, except for the fact that I keep my phone with me everywhere, so it's nice if there's a nice mobile interface. So having said that I have this issue, my relationship with technology is one of adrenaline. When I work with books in the library, I am centered. I am psychic, I am fulfilled, I am happy, I have a really good day. When I work with the computers and the databases, I love that click. I love the way it feels. My adrenaline goes crazy, and I find myself saying, yes, yes, yes. And then if I get everything I need off the computer, I might even do like a spike, like a volleyball player, like, yes! Which I don't do when I do with books. So I love both, but I find I'm a lot more centered with books.
Very quickly, if it's shrink wrapped, I'll buy it. All right? If I'm a relentless pursuer of technological innovation, I'm not going to say it's like heroin to me, but yeah, that's me.
I'm going to speak only to what my relationship with technology used to be, which was a problem. And I'm trying not to have the same problems, which is that I was just too impulsive with technology. And I kind of assumed because it was easy, it was good. And I didn't really include that in the final sense, but it's more of a habit. And I'm thinking, we have habits as instructors, and I'm sorry. Yeah, I was the guy in the back of the faculty meeting thinking I could multitask much better than I could. I do a little bit of that. But we have colleagues doing that at commencement, and that is not cool. Having the smartphone out for any reason whatsoever at commencement. Okay. So, but I'm a hypocrite because I didn't do it at commencement, did it at faculty meetings. So we're trying to address this stuff because we're all in the same damn situation, and we are working on it together.
Well, similar to Jesse, I kind of have a love-hate relationship with technology. I definitely try to embrace it, but in a mindful way to see what kind of added value it has. I was thinking about it just a few years ago, everybody seemed to have a Flash website. Now nobody has it because it seemed very valuable because it seemed cool, and then people realized, no, it's just kind of annoying. I just give me the meat and potatoes. The same deal, you embrace technology, you try to be online all the time, but how many times have you looked at the clock and said, why have I watched 2 hours worth of cat videos? See, I mean, they're so damn cute, but where's the time gone? And science has come in and actually shown us that we lose track of time online. So a lot of science is actually coming up to speed with a lot of these kind of intuitive feelings that we've had about the kind of addictive qualities, potentially, of technology.
I think of technology as being, I guess, I feel very playful because there's always something new. There's always another new game. There's always a new toy. There's always something that you could do that you couldn't do before. And so that's very exciting, finding those
the only reason I've got a phone is to time. I apologize.
They're playing on Sally. They're playing on the cell phone.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thanks. Sorry.
Let me just preface this by saying that I am 43 and I have yet to purchase a cell phone. So as you can imagine, it's I have a difficult relationship as an instructor with technology. I much prefer face-to-face with students. However, of course I do use it. It's impossible not to use it, but I do. Looking at technology is probably 5 to 10% of my courses where I'm engaging in some kind of technology. I often don't log in when I teach. I just simply am right there with them, walking around the room, almost like a talk show host. I feel like.
And I think I'm almost finished too. I think James and I are the only two non-technology people up here, except that I think it's really cool. I think it's a very expensive toy, which I really enjoy using and wasting time at. But I put it in my class as much as I think the students will like. It's a good tool, and I'm trying to learn more so I can use it better.
Wow, that's amazing. 43 and no phone. I thought I was Amish because I have this. This is my phone. I have a BlackBerry. This thing is so ancient, my students make fun out of me. Professor G, why do you still have that? And I don't know, it still works. You know, when this dies, I'll probably get an iPhone. But that's in my personal life. I have to log into my ComNet to check my email because I don't have it linked to my phone and everything. So I'll check that maybe once a night or something. But as far as as an instructor, I utilize a lot more technology. I would say I'm almost cyborg when it comes to being an instructor. And I think we'll talk about some of the stuff that we do later with technology. Okay. But yeah, I'm kind of an interesting study of, personally, I'm a dinosaur, but here I'm kind of, I try to be avant-garde.
Thanks, everybody. And I neglected to mention to you all that we were supposed to have these guys introduce themselves as one of three things: almost Amish, which is why you might have heard references to that; compromise, somewhere in the middle; or almost cyborg. So hence those labels. So our first question is, what is your relationship to tech? Oh, wrong. What is your definition of old school technology and digital technology? And what do you find effective or ineffective in each of these technologies? Who would like to start us?
It's a false dilemma. It's designed to bring you here because it's like, people like fights and conflicts. So it's the WWE mentality that would get you in here with versus this versus that. I mean, we're all defining this in different ways. The concept of a digital divide is a very broad one. We know there's an infinite array of digital divides. I met with a colleague yesterday who could do something, in Word I couldn't do, and I'm constantly encountering this. Students say, "Wow, you're so advanced," and I'm saying, "No, I'm not." We have these kinds of conversations with each other. So these are subjective, individual assessments and judgments. What's old school, what's new, because it's going to change in 5 minutes, right? More information the human race has acquired in the last 6 months than the entire history of humanity prior to that. It's just very fast. We can't keep a pace of it. So we're making an effort to pretend to, or to try to, as a way of being honest with ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is all relative because in grad school I had a professor. He was about in his upper 70s, and I remember very vividly he pushed a button on this projector with the one with the dittos on it, and you actually write on the ditto and you put it on top, and he had a hard time making it work actually. And he said that was new technology. I was like, wow, really? And we kind of chuckled about that. But yeah, I think it definitely depends on the individual. Yeah, for sure. I agree.
So maybe I can ask the second question again then, because if we agree that the two are hard to define and inherently subjective, then could you speak to examples of one or the other or something along the line that are particularly effective or ineffective?
Well, I think when you're talking about digital, Sally, I think you're talking about something instant So instant communication, to me, it's a lot more varied than old school or book stuff. Book stuff seems to be more static than video stuff or digital stuff. One of the differences also is that when you're using new technology or digital technology, you can incorporate a lot more information in it. I think the access to information is one of the big differences between digital stuff and book stuff. Book stuff is kind of static, but digital is changing all the time. And because it's changing, it's kind of fun to look at. Okay, that's for me the difference.
Yeah, I guess the classic case with old school versus new school, if you will, would be the open versus the closed source of a textbook versus an ebook. So on one hand, more people, millennials, are expecting that open source information constantly being updated. An earlier student mentioned Enron case, right, which might be in a textbook. You want to kind of quickly update it, but at the same time, we're having studies showing that people are more apt to skim on an ebook, less apt to actually have condensed version of that. Really think about it.
So I guess just by closing that question, since you brought up the issue of reading, and I think there's plenty of research out there that's showing that the brainwaves, neural pathways are changing as a result of the way we interact and read on our devices. What has the panel noticed about? I mean, it's kind of a softball, but can we make any observations about the way our students are reading, and does it all have to be bad news?
You know,
Maybe there are new ways of reading.
Sally, I wouldn't care how my students read. What I care about if they read. And unfortunately, sometimes with all this new technology that you see, a lot of them think that they don't have to read at all, which is a real shame. But for myself, you know, going to bed with a Kindle is not very romantic. I need a good paperback.
How do you follow that? So is it safe to say, has anyone on the panel engaged, we know that we don't like skimming behavior, or worse yet, no reading. Has anyone experienced students reading in any new ways online? Any good new ways? 'Cause I think there might be a couple.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was a really positive point. You mentioned the online videos, right? That really kind of appeals to the way we like to learn. We're seeing something. So that really is an added value, where you can say, okay, here's a new issue that's going on. Here's a video that just came out about it. You're talking about Mount Everest. Let's talk about Sherpas. What's a Sherpa? Here's a link to a Sherpa. Let's talk about the accident that's going on. You wouldn't have that with a closed source of information with the textbook.
Great. And I think Steve could speak to that even more, of the hypertext issue, because you can always drill down more.
Yeah, we see this issue of traversing information rather than necessarily reading. And well, that's the new way of reading, I guess you would say, is traversing online. What is a Sherpa? What is this and that and the other thing? But I think that's a skill that needs to be taught. It's not something that people are going to acquire on their own. But I think we should be looking at it or thinking about it like reading. That's really all I have to say about that.
And Lisa, and then we'll move on.
I was really interested when I went to UConn for a conference. They had the new head of digital humanities speak, and he talked about, this concept of reading in short bits. And he said that what UConn would be working on would be working with corporations like Cigna, so that if somebody wanted to buy insurance, they would go on the Cigna website and actually play a game and just read little snippets and have their avatar go through the game, and at the end, you would learn what kind of insurance you should purchase. He also talked about Jane Austen, and as you would read, it would be sort of hyperlinked the way you do in new media, so that as you're reading, you would then click on something and it would take you to what England looked like at that time, what the people were wearing at that time, and it kept just clicking and taking you to new places, and that they had found great success with both of those.
Following up on that, we have a really hard time everywhere defining what technology is, and short attention span or reading in bits. But what historian? I mean, as a sort of historian of literature, the Japanese were writing haiku long before the invention of Twitter. So there really hasn't been much change. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
And we have one more comment from.
I was just going to mention, as instructors and professors, I think all of us here probably lament the lack of critical thinking, that students are not able to take in information and really think about it other than just digesting it, if they can do that at all. And I would just argue that in conjunction with all they need to learn as far as navigating that digital world and being critical of that information, is that the older or the denser works in print, and I do think there's a marked difference in print and online, even if it's the same kind of, or the same text, is that kind of deep thinking can only enhance them in all these other ways, including the digital world. And I know that a lot of people here are in favor of really, ebooks and that kind of thing, and I am too, but I think that there needs to be some balance, because students simply don't get that. They don't get it here. They're never going to get as long as they live, because they're never going to read this stuff on their own. Most of them, again. I think as instructors, we should be pushing that, in conjunction with these other forums.
Thanks, everybody. And for the next question, we've got it's about resources. So, what is the panel's perception about the investment of resources in these different technologies? Have we swung the pendulum too far in one or the other direction, and how can we best apply our resources in planning and instruction? Henry.
I think, I love how far our classrooms have come, and it's really nice to see the kind of hardware that we have in them now. And I know that hardware is very expensive. One thing I've thought about for the future of our kind of classroom integration of technology is trying to use the technology that students come to class with, more. So in my teaching practice, they're already comfortable on those devices, and it would certainly save the college a good amount of money, and would be something that the students would have both in and out of the classroom.
I was going to say that, can't exactly reach this. Digital stuff is very, very expensive. And another thing with the digital market is that we can provide things for the students that make it very easy for them to learn, except that sometimes I think we're giving them too much, and we're taking a lot of responsibility away from the students. Consider PowerPoints. I bet most people here, when they lecture now, they don't come into a classroom without PowerPoints. And a lot of times, you come out without, they get three PowerPoint slides and 3 lines to take notes on these PowerPoint slides. Well, we're giving them PowerPoint slides that go along with their book. We're giving them paper on which to take notes. And we're giving them an awful lot, but then they're not doing enough. And we're giving them so much that their activity, they're not doing a lot of their own work, and they're not using any of their own activity to invest in their own learning. So consequently, they have all this neat stuff, but maybe they're not learning as much as they could if they didn't have all these neat toys. That's what I wonder all the time. And I really like technology. It's cool. It's fun. But the students have to take responsibility for their own learning too.
Anyone else? Lisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, there's Adrian right there. I think the speaker that you had this morning was so inspiring, for getting us to think about how not to spoon feed our students through technology. I mean, the ideas he had about working in projects and working in groups and having them take responsibility for their own learning was really inspiring. And I think, always think about the Technology Resource Committee and Allison's surveys of the faculty, and then we'll probably be surveying the students in the fall. We should be taking all that information and moving forward with it. Not just creating technology for technology's sake, but doing something exciting with it, and that as peers, we should be telling each other what our successes are, so that we learn from each other too. But I thought this morning was really awe-inspiring. I thought it was great.
Thanks, everybody. Our next question,
So can I just interject really quickly? on that last
very
one?
quickly, sure.
I just attended a great session with Steve Mead on vision, which I didn't know how to use before today very well at all, okay? And I'd love to be able to extend those tools to any device that's in the room. Because I wanted to adopt ebooks. I'm not Amish. I want to kind of compromise every moment according to the circumstance. And the best student in my class last semester couldn't control his impulses enough to get off the damn Facebook when I gave students the option of adopting an ebook, okay? We have to be able to control the damn flow of information in our classrooms, be able to keep Facebook out of our classroom completely. And if a student has an emergency message from a parent or a significant other, that message can get through, I want to empower us to be able to do this so we actually can do what we need to do. And this is really about empowering ourselves as instructors, and it really is about academic freedom. We don't have the freedom if we can't really be masters of the technology, as opposed to servants of it.
So many layers, right? The actual teaching and learning element, and then the meta layer of how the communication happens or doesn't happen, right? Because of or enhanced by technology. And maybe that is a perfect segue into our next question, which is what particular things challenge or encourage your instructional strategy with either old school or with digital technology? What sort of issues challenge or encourage? And I guess maybe if I can rephrase that a bit, what considerations do you give when deciding on a delivery method or an enhancement method for teaching and learning? That's what I'm hearing there.
I see Jesse with the banana phone over there.
Oh, is it for me?
It's ingenious.
Thanks.
I think we really have to take into consideration the demographic that we're serving. It's Generation Y. It's almost not, I believe it's called Generation Z now. The people that are, say, 16 or so, they're going to be coming to Tunxis, so they're a different generation. But I don't know, maybe I missed the boat somewhere, but a lot of students cannot stay off the phone in class. They'll try to sneak them, especially the ones in the back of the class will be kind of hide behind somebody and be texting. And I try to have discussions with my classes, and we've even had a few Socratic seminars, but it's tough to engage a lot of them. It's just, I don't know where a lot of them are at, albeit a lot of them do communicate well and contribute ideas, but sometimes it's tough to engage that certain part that just they don't seem to be interested for some reason with type of a humanistic or a person-to-person discussion.
You just have to use a hammer. Just smash one phone.
It's a great idea.
Well, I think one of the problems right now is we're relying so much on willpower, right? As Americans, we always like to believe, okay, well, I can have my smartphone here and I'm not going to check it. But again, that's just not true. It's the same thing. I mean, there are distraction blocking softwares like Freedom right now, which will block your internet for a short period of time, start with writers. So you do have a lot of options like that educators probably are going to embrace, because it's the same idea, right? I'm never going to compete with Stephen Colbert. If somebody wants to watch that, their clip on their iPad versus hearing me lecture, right? He's more excited than me. So that he's always going to win out. So if we always try to compete, then we're turning into edutainment. And that's not going to be a good path, right? You got to almost remove that temptation all the time.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, sometimes I really worry about, I definitely, when I see a student, checking Facebook or texting and not listening to me at all, I fall into that lockdown kind of mindset where I've got to have some kind of control on these devices to keep them listening to me. But I worry about that a lot. I think in many ways the challenge can be taken as a good one, in the sense that I'm going to try to provide something that Facebook Stephen Colbert can't provide because they're not right there in front of the people. When we're talking about the soft skills, no matter how funny Stephen Colbert is, he can't be in the same room with the students, and so I take it as a challenge to try to provide whatever it is that the net can't provide.
There's another challenge that happens in my classroom all the time. When I go and I think that a student is checking something I don't want them to check, like their emails, and I ask them about it, and they say, "Oh no, we're just checking whether or not you got your facts right." Jeez, can be very embarrassing. Luckily, the one time it happened, I was right.
Also, want to kind of tack on there that one of the things we should then be cognizant of is if something like Google Glass with augmented reality does take off, you're talking about the smartphone times 10, right? Because then I could be wearing technology and you can't ask me to take it off because those are my classes, right? They're working with prescriptions right now of having kind of the augmented, so I'd be seeing reality and some type of computer screen at the same time. That's going to be a lot more challenges for education.
And that also leads to a lot of challenges for assessment and different kinds of the way we approach how we're going to assess something, because it's different. It's going to be very different than it was when we went to college.
Everything is an open book test, always.
Always.
Because we're talking about internet-ready contact lenses, and even implants are not far off. We're not far away from this stuff. It may sound out there.
But to
this
be the
is
devil's
a
advocate,
challenge.
maybe we want it to be. Maybe we want things to be an open book
Maybe
test
you do.
all the time.
But it's a question.
Think of what happened. Well, when we did the song thing this morning, and the song was based on a song 10 years ago, and it was based on a song 15 years ago, which was based on another song, 300 years ago?
I think we ask that question because if we're then compelled to redefine a lot of things about teaching with technology, that may force us to ask these questions in more responsible ways, rather than just accept any one particular model. So we have some new opportunities. There are new possibilities here of just we can make some of our own decisions, and we can make decisions as a community, which I think is most important.
So I'm going to move on to the next question.
Go ahead.
Maybe I know you well enough to know that you'll frame it well in some other context. You're very adept. That's a compliment, of course, to your intellectual ability. Given that increasingly sophisticated use of technology in the classroom is virtually unavoidable, how do we then move beyond a simplistic old school versus digital technology sort of conflict? I think you started to speak to this panel. You just started talking about the way we've been thinking about instructional delivery, classroom culture, and it does sound a bit like a war, doesn't it? It sounds like we're almost at war, and I'm not sure if this question is asking this, but what is your thought on moving beyond that kind of dichotomy, this or that, in terms of resources, personnel, hardware, etc.?
Well, it's a good segue from the last question, because I guess we could start calling this the Google Glass question or the Google Glass paradox, because when we talk about the new technologies and as they're coming, we always assume that people will actually know how to use them and use them proficiently. But what I found is that the cell phone problem is actually a bridge issue. That is, right now we're confronting the student in the back of the class with the cell phone, but it actually encourages faculty to innovate, instructors to innovate the way they teach, that is, incorporate or use the problem as a solution to another problem. That is, we always need up-to-date information in writing courses. We need to know how many bus accidents there were in Connecticut in 1935. So we have to be able to, it comes up. And so we have to open up the technology for those purposes and no other purpose. Not sitting back in the back of the room tapping and this and that and the other thing, but learning how to incorporate those new concepts in the teaching. I mean, it's forced me to go back to thinking about, wow, I really need to brush up on my speaking skills more in class, because if I have the technology working and things are automated, this opens up more time for me to talk or to engage in debate. So there's that old school versus digital, or one thing enhancing the other.
One thing to add on to what Steve just said is that students, I find, often open their phones and they're not engaged with the class. I think as teachers that if we are figuring out ways, whether through technology or through the force of our personality or through our lessons or through our activities, if students are engaged, they're not going to be looking at technology, they won't be on Facebook. I sat in one of these, I went to a conference similar to this about 3 years ago at a different college, and there was a lot of technology experts there, and they were demonstrating all this wonderful technology that is now, of course, outdated, but they were saying that on survey after survey of students, that the number one thing students really wanted was more FaceTime with their professors. They wanted to get to know their professors. That technology was wonderful to enhance that sort of relationship that was personally built. But I think with technology, we do run the danger of just sitting behind our desks, scrolling through PowerPoints with the lights dimmed, and just, going through it over and over again. I'm not saying that happens everywhere, but I think that's as professors, we are always very busy. It's a very comfortable way to teach. And I think if we use technology in a way that's engaging with students, as that wonderful keynote speaker had demonstrated for us, that was a huge eye-opener for me, because I always thought technology equals disengagement. But seeing that keynote speaker, it really opened my eyes. So that was really wonderful. But I really think that the one-on-one relationships, and we all know that we have those, they're really, really wonderful with students, and students love coming to class. And that classroom dynamic is really special. And if technology is enhancing that, that's great. If it replaces it, I think that's where the danger comes.
Thank you. We have one more question. And just to close the loop on that last one, it seems like everybody's saying it's just asking a new set of questions, right? Which is really good about teaching and learning. So can the panel be very specific in our last question before we do Q&A about what you've done with either with either kind of or somewhere in the middle, technology, old school technology, new technology, what you've used to improve engagement in your classes? What's one example of something, and even if it is PowerPoint, maybe you've used it in an innovative way. How have you used one of these to accomplish your goals differently, perhaps, in the last few years?
I'm going to jump in because I teach 2 very heavy content courses that have been taught for eons as lecture, straight lecture. You stand up and spout things that normally is in a book. But what technology has really helped me do is put some laughter and some affective domain into my classroom. For example, YouTube. YouTube has these cool songs about sugars, okay? Now, to some kind of Beatles music, and I get my whole A&P class singing about sugars, and I see smiles instead of yawns. And that's what technology has been to me. I love it because the students enjoy it. A little bit, not all the time, but a little bit.
The conjunction junction for A&P, yeah. Anyone else on a specific, something specific on the spectrum that they're using to engage students?
Well, I teach grab another mic.
Yeah, I'll speak to both of them. Hello, okay, back on. No, one of the things, I do like to have discussions in my class and ask students questions to get them engaged and think critically. But also, I think some of us also teach online courses, and I personally, I've never taken an online course, but I thought an idea was I kind of took a page from the Yale playbook. They record some of their classes, and they put them on this Yale Open Online Courses type of system. So I've begun to record my in-class sessions, and I think I have some students here actually, right there, all right? And they ask questions in class, probably the same type of questions that our online students would ask, and I put those in-class recordings, and we put them onto the online classes in the future, so students can watch it, and it's just another tool to help them out. And I gotten pretty good reviews from it, pretty good feedback, so that's the way that I'm utilizing technology into that. And also, I show a lot of YouTube videos also. Like, there's this one video I show in economics about, it's a hip-hop song about economics, and it's the students love it. It's made by these econ guys. And I also, the discussions in class, I always gear it towards stuff that interests the students. What are they interested in? Well, they're interested about when they graduate, what's going to happen. We talk about the job market. We talk about the type of skills that employers look, and we pull up information on the computer and look at, these are the forecasted industries that are going to be growing in the future. Do you have the skills that they're looking for? So on and so forth. So everything is, I try to gear everything towards what the student is interested in. And I think it works for the most part. Keeps them engaged.
Great, we'll take one more if anyone has one, and then we're going to turn it over for questions.
Just kind of link this idea of combining approaches. This is not in the back, because I'm supposed to be able to project my voice from my job description. So the contrary, is that working there? Okay, good. Coach voice.
Jesse.
Oh my God.
Room voice.
There you go. We're in a place where that last question. Yep. We're in a place where that last question ties in with this one again too. We kind of tricked that question out, souped it up, and phrased it in a funky way to make it clear that we can't just assume anything is totally inevitable. We left ourselves some wiggle room with that, because if we have an instructor come in who is even more Amish than James, let's say we have an actual Amish professor, right, come in, okay? I'm not going to tell students that they don't, oh, by the way, don't take that class because he's kind of Amish. We have to prepare students for situations. They will meet people in the world who've never seen a computer, never seen a smartphone. Since the advent of opposable thumbs, there's always been a different caste system in place, let's say, for different levels of aptitude with tools, right? We're all always in some kind of different relationship. So we have to be flexible and keep being critical thinkers and keep being playful, frankly, as a discourse community around these subjects. We can really have profound effects on our students' lives by being playful and being thoughtful people.
Thank you. Any questions? I'm going to bring the mic to you. We're going to try to minimize. Nothing wrong with coach voice, but we don't want you to get hoarse. You're sick? All right, here you go. Go ahead, Steve.
This way. There we go.
One of the things that I think a lot of this has masked is the technology, and what we're discussing is students, not understanding that they need to take a lot of responsibility for themselves. That I think everything on the internet, digital technology, has made things spoon-fed. And one of the things that, and I'm a student, so I'm not saying, it's like, I used to go uphill backwards in the snow with the wolves at my heels like grandpa. I'm there, I'm living it, and every day I have to understand that I need to go a little bit extra, because in the real world, in the job markets, they're going to ask you to do that. They're going to say, look, here's this thing, you need to figure it out. You can't be spoon-fed. There's not going to be a video and a PowerPoint and a flow chart and somebody there holding your hand along the way. So my question is, how maybe we're deflecting it on technology as doing something, but what can we do, or you as teachers and professors, what can you do to direct us to take that under our own advisement to figure out what we need to do and help us kind of figure it out on our own and not need to be spoon-fed at the same time, obviously.
Okay.
I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, I don't think about personal responsibility as being necessarily linked to technology. I think that was always kind of a problem even before we had computers and everything. Sometimes what happens though is that we as teachers don't know that a new technology comes along that makes it incredibly easy for a student to do one particular thing. Like I think in math. I don't know how many people are familiar with Wolfram Alpha, and just realize how much a student can do with a phone to solve almost any problem you would pose in a traditional math class. So sometimes that spoon feeding is by accident.
I don't know if Brandon, you would agree with this, but I think we have to, partially we have to let you guys sink.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't
Right?
think that happens enough.
Because it's not just the real world where you have to get things done, but also here. So I don't know. I mean, that's a tough question because I see over the last couple of years my classes diminish and diminish and diminish because there are some things where all I'm going to say is go read the directions, and that's it. And you can either read the directions or not. And if you don't read the directions, then you're sunk. And I will go to bat for you guys as much as I can, but I think we're in that sort of phase where, yeah, we have to let them sink.
Thanks.
Yes and no, you know? I mean, Brennan, is Brennan? Yeah. I recruited you, I should know your name. I'm sitting outside the door and he's having this amazing conversation, two guys having this incredible conversation. Can we have an old school digital task force of some kind that's made up of student and faculty? It just kind of occurred to me earlier when you had your amazing panel, and I thought you guys were downright eloquent, by the way. Amazing job. You know, and we can continue the conversation. Thank you so much, Mr. Councilman. Awesome job. Right? We can continue this conversation, which is, I think, an indispensable one. You have so many things to offer us, and you know, nobody has to drown, but we can all be part of this, you know, this discussion, because then how can we can't ever ensure any of these kinds of, you know, good outcomes, but we can work together in some way, and I think we're able to do that. So let's talk about that. The task force, student faculty task force.
I think we have time for one more question. We're a little over time. Is that okay, Adrian? One more question? Okay.
Someone said earlier something about incorporating the technologies that students have now, just with being able to incorporating it what they have now and incorporating it to your teaching so they can use it. Now, I think a problem with that would be everybody doesn't have the same technology, nor can everybody afford the same technology, and they don't have the same resources, nor, even though the school provides many, many resources, a lot of your students are adults with children and jobs and may not be able to come to the school to be able to use the resources you have. How would you incorporate, if you go so far into using technology, how would you incorporate the students who are not able to use it, or don't have the time to learn to use it, or don't have the resources to be able to get here to be able to use it?
You know, that's a good question, but I think everybody here should realize that our job is not to promote or de-promote the use of technology. Our job here is to help kids learn, okay? And if some kids can learn with technology, then bravo, we give them everything that we can let them use. But I would never, my job is to help you learn, okay? And to help encourage your responsibility, because ultimately it is your responsibility to learn. I'll do whatever I can do. I'll give you technology if I can, if you have it. I'll give you old school or textbooks or whatever else you have it. I'll give you PowerPoints, I'll give you lectures, I'll give you office hours. I'll give you telephones. You can call your teacher and ask them. I think we get kind of hung up on the technology thing. We use technology when it works. But if for whatever reason it doesn't work, maybe power failure, that doesn't mean we can stop learning, or we should stop to try to learn. Okay? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when I referred to kind of bring your own device type instructional technology, I was thinking not of requiring, like some students have the experience of in math class being required to buy a TI-83 calculator, and that's not necessarily what I was thinking of, where you make everybody in the class bring, you know, a particular device because that's the only one that you're comfortable teaching on. But right now I'm teaching a mobile hybrid math course, and one of the things I've tried to do is to find apps that the student does have to have a smartphone to be in the course, but instead of making them say bring either an iOS mobile device or an Android or a Windows device, looking for apps that are cross-platform, so have the widest possible usage. So I've got no hard and fast rules. Like I think a very interesting class could be done with technology and smartphones if you only had one for every 5 students, which I think is probably, with our student population, 20%. There's at least 20% of students in class that have smartphones. So it's a challenge, and I can't tell you this is exactly how I do it, but.
So I think we've gotten to the close of our session. Thanks to all our panelists, and I think Adrian's going to come back up and give some closing remarks.
Thank you. Just another quick thank you to everybody. I thought this was fabulous. I'm so excited. So I hope you all are excited, and I hope you go back and you talk about it with your colleagues who weren't here today. Tell them they missed the best conference ever. Tell them about the after party at Joey. Don't tell them it was at their own expense. Just tell them about it. But please fill out those forms. Send them to the wonderful ladies in the back. I do want to give a shout out to Patty and Rosalie, Ruth Galea, and also Sharon Kennedy, who have set everything up. Everyone is listed on the back of the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you.